What if Varian Wrynn from the Siege of Orgrimmar time-traveled to the First War? This is the story of what happened in one of many timelines. Enjoy. Emerging from the Siege of Orgrimmar, Varian Wrynn, the High King of the Alliance, strode with a heavy heart. The air of Durotar was still thick with the echoes of battle, the fall of Garrosh Hellscream lingering in the silence. It was here, beneath Orgrimmar, that Varian had cast his final ultimatum upon the newly appointed war chief Vol'jin and the Horde, a demand for honor or the promise of their end. As he lingered at the gates, prepared to voyage home to Stormwind, his gaze stretched over the rugged landscape of Durotar, a land so unlike his own. Alone in his thoughts, a sudden whirlwind of time energy engulfed him, drawing him into its vortex. When consciousness returned to Varian, he found himself enveloped by the familiar embrace of Elwyn Forest. The sight of the towering trees and distant mountains brought a familiar comfort. He knew this land as his homeland, yet something felt amiss. Determined, he set his sights on Stormwind City, judging by the mountain range, a mere half-day's journey from where he stood. Despite the weight of his armor and the heft of Charlemagne, his legendary sword, Varian's stride was unyielding. He was not your typical human. Imbued with the might of Goldrin, the wild god of wolves, his strength surpassed that of the mightiest Tauren. His reflexes were as sharp as the most agile night elves, and his stamina seemed endless. The path before him, though treacherous to many, was but a minor inconvenience to Varian Wrynn. As he neared a road cutting through the forest, a commotion broke the peace. A band of gnolls, feral and ruthless hyena men, assailed a group of human merchants. Without hesitation, Varian intervened, his blade Charlemagne singing a deadly song as it cleaved through the attackers. His fist, clad in armor, struck with such force that one gnoll was sent crashing into a tree with a bone-crushing thud. The gnolls vanquished, the merchants offered their cheers, yet their faces held no recognition of their savior. Their ignorance was a puzzle to Varian. Further inquiry revealed that they hailed from Lordaeron, speaking with a distinct accent. His confusion deepened, but there was no time to dwell on such mysteries. His immediate concern lay with the absence of Stormwind's guards along these perilous roads. Approaching a stone watchtower, Varian found guards clad not in their usual attire, but in armor that harkened back to an older, more traditional style. Yet it gleamed as if newly forged. His presence was met not with salutes, but with drawn swords. His authority seemed a foreign concept to these men. The captain, confronted by Varian's imposing figure, faltered under his stern reprimand. Yet even he did not recognize the king. A realization dawned upon Varian. Something was profoundly amiss. With a sense of urgency, he left the watchtower and made his way to Stormwind in search of answers. As Varian Wrynn neared the gates of Stormwind, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The gates and walls, standing tall and unyielding, bore an unfamiliar visage, stirring in Varian a deep unease. The guards, with a stern demeanor, demanded papers of passage, documents Varian did not possess. Realizing the precariousness of his situation, Varian adopted the guise of Logosh, a persona he once held, and revealed he hailed from a distant land beyond the ocean, Kalimdor. With a voice steady and calm, he declared his intent to speak with the King of Stormwind. The gatekeeper, intimidated by the sight of Varian's imposing figure, his splendid armor, and the magical elven sword, permitted his entry without further question. Striding through the streets of Stormwind, Varian found himself enveloped in a city that echoed the memories of his youth. The citizens, struck by his grandeur and the sight of Charlemagne, parted ways, whispering in hushed tones. This version of Stormwind, untouched by the ravages of the Orcish horde, differed markedly from the city he knew, rebuilt from the ashes of war. Yet, amidst the horizon, the palace stood in the distance, a beacon of familiarity, just as he remembered from the days of his childhood. However, this semblance of peace was short-lived. The city's denizens, astir with apprehension, made way as a contingent of Stormwind guards encircled Varian. Amidst the guards emerged a figure from Varian's past, Anduin Lothar, the Lion of Stormwind, his childhood hero, and the namesake of Varian's own son. Varian's heart swelled with a blend of reverence and turmoil. Lothar, with a commanding presence, interrogated Logosh. Varian, guarding his true identity, could not reveal himself to be King Varian Wrynn of a different time, for in this world his younger self would be but a boy within the palace walls. Varian, choosing the path of discretion, proclaimed his name as Logosh, stating his purpose to meet the king. To Varian's dismay, Lothar arrested him, acting upon a prior missive describing a figure of Varian's description as a threat to one of their watchtowers. Charlemagne, his trusted blade, was confiscated, leaving Varian bereft of his mighty sword. Faced with the conflict of standing against his childhood hero and the guards he inherently respected, Varian chose not to resist. The misunderstanding at the watchtower in Elwyn Forest and his barging through the city gates had cast a shadow upon his intentions, a shadow he could not dispel with the truth of his identity and purpose, for the truth in this reality seemed far too fantastical to believe. Imprisoned in the shadowy depths of Stormwind stockades, Logosh, the man once known as King Varian Wrynn, endured days shrouded in uncertainty. Surrounded by unsavory inmates, he deftly quelled their threats and even a brawl, asserting his dominance through his unparalleled strength and combat skills. Yet, his mind was elsewhere, haunted by whispers from the prison guards about green-skinned monsters laying waste to the countryside, including the town of Brightwood. The dire news struck a chord in Logosh's heart. He had ventured to Stormwind to warn his father, the king, of an impending orc invasion that threatened to obliterate the city and claim the lives of his parents. As night cloaked the city, Logosh's strategic mind came to the fore. He stealthily acquired the keys from an unsuspecting prison guard and liberated himself from the confinements of his cell. Like a shadow, he maneuvered through the prison, incapacitating foes, both inmates and prison guards alike, until he emerged into the night, garbed in nothing but prison rags. Devoid of his armor and the legendary sword Charlemagne, Logosh was undeterred. He had faced adversaries without such aids before, during his time as a gladiator in the Crimson Ring. He knew well that approaching the king directly would only result in his swift return to a cell. So instead, he resolved to demonstrate his worth. In the dead of night, he infiltrated the Stormwind barracks, donning a suit of Stormwind soldier armor and arming himself with a standard-issue shield and sword. Now disguised as a Stormwind soldier, albeit a conspicuously tall one, Logosh joined a battalion dispatched to the countryside. Amidst their ranks, he remained a silent, enigmatic presence, his true identity concealed behind the plate mail helmet. The battalion rode on horseback to Lakeshire, finding the town besieged by Orcish invaders. In the ensuing conflict, Logosh's exceptional battle prowess shone through. He relinquished his shield and began dual-wielding swords in a whirlwind of precision and might, leaving both his allies and the Orcish invaders in awe. As the battalion successfully evacuated the town's inhabitants across the Everstill Bridge, disaster struck. An Orcish catapult collapsed the bridge, stranding a dozen soldiers. Unmasking his identity, Logosh shed his armor and leaped across the gaping chasm in the bridge, a feat beyond the realms of human capability. Armed with scavenged weapons, he valiantly defended the stranded soldiers, urging them to shed their heavy armor and swim to safety. Once the soldiers were secure, swimming across Lake Everstill, Logosh too retreated, leaping back over the destroyed bridge. With the citizens and soldiers in tow, they hastened back to Stormwind, bearing grim news of Lakeshire's fall. Logosh, once confined to the shadows of a prison cell, had emerged not just as a mysterious figure from across the great sea, but as a beacon of hope and strength for the kingdom of Stormwind. Upon their return to Stormwind, the battalion, accompanied by Logosh, was met by Anduin Lothar and his soldiers. The men whom Logosh had valiantly saved from the orcs at Lakeshire recounted his heroic deeds, his prowess in battle slaying orc after orc single-handedly. These tales of bravery caught the attention of Anduin Lothar, who had himself journeyed to release Logosh from the stockades, realizing the connection between them. The lion's head gold-clasped belt, a part of Logosh's armor, was identical to Lothar's own, a significant relic Logosh had chosen to wear in honor of his fallen childhood hero from his own timeline. Anduin Lothar, with a discerning eye, had recognized the striking resemblance between Logosh and the young Prince Varian Wrynn. In his wisdom, Lothar decided to keep Logosh's true identity concealed, trusting him for his valor and for the lives of his men he had saved. This trust led Lothar to return to Logosh his armor and the enchanted sword Charlemagne. Logosh was led to the royal palace, where he was introduced to the Stormwind royal family, including King Wrynn and Queen Taria Wrynn. Though Logosh and Lothar could not disclose the true identity of Logosh, the meeting was a heartwarming one, stirring deep emotions in Logosh, who had witnessed his parents' demise in his own timeline as a young boy. Logosh, driven by the memories of the past and the looming threat of the present, warned King Lane, apprentice wizard Khadgar, and Anduin Lothar of the treacherous nature of Garona Half-Orcan, urging them to evacuate Stormwind. However, King Lane, proud and steadfast, refused to abandon his city. As the orcish horde advanced through Elwyn Forest, Logosh stood shoulder to shoulder with Anduin Lothar, defending their land. Logosh's skills in diplomacy convinced the king and led to the evacuation of non-combatants to the safety of Lordaeron, ensuring that, though Stormwind might fall, its people would survive. The battlefield echoed with the cries of Logosh and Lothar as they fought fiercely against the encroaching orcish horde. Retreating to Stormwind City, the defenders made their final stand. Logosh unleashed the full might of Charlemagne, earning even greater respect from Anduin Lothar and inspiring the soldiers. He was determined to make the orcs bleed for every inch of Stormwind they sought to claim. In the palace, they found Garona Half-Orcan restrained, captured preemptively due to Logosh's prior warnings. Though Logosh sought swift justice, Queen Taria Wrynn, embodying compassion, opted to leave Garona to her fate at the hands of the orcs. As Stormwind braced for its final moments, Logosh, alongside Anduin Lothar and the remaining soldiers, fled the city, leaving it to burn at the hands of the unstoppable orcish horde. In the wake of Stormwind's fall, a pivotal moment unfolded at the city's harbor. Logosh, alongside the young Prince Varian Wrynn, King Lane, and Queen Taria, all met with Lothar, Khadgar, and a band of resilient soldiers who had returned from the Tower of Karazhan. Prepared for their exodus, they set sail for the safety of Lordaeron, escaping the clutches of the orcish horde. The city of Stormwind, though conquered, stood empty and desolate. Its people, riches, and relics had been safely transported to Lordaeron, leaving the orcs with nothing but the hollow shells of buildings and empty coffers. Years later, Logosh dedicated himself to the tutelage of the young Varian Wrynn, nurturing him to be a formidable warrior and a compassionate king. Their bond grew, Logosh viewing Varian simultaneously as a brother and in a sense a son, mirroring the bond he shared with his son Anduin he had been forced to leave behind in his own timeline. He resolved to steer this young Varian Wrynn towards a fate brighter than his own. As the ominous clouds of the Second War gathered on the horizon, Logosh, known as the Wolf, was poised to stand shoulder to shoulder with Anduin Lothar, the Lion, as joint supreme commanders of the alliance of Lordaeron's armies. This alliance symbolized wisdom and strength, as both heroes embodied these virtues. However, before the Second War would begin, Logosh contemplated a series of strategic endeavors. He considered a journey to Gilneas to persuade the young king Genn Greymane, hoping his knowledge of Genn would sway the kingdom to join the war effort. Additionally, he planned to approach the kingdom of Dalaran, leveraging his knowledge of Anton Idas's apprentice, Jaina Proudmoore, to gain an audience and reveal the true threat of the orcs. A daring venture across the Great Sea to engage with the Night Elves also beckoned. Despite anticipated hostility, Logosh believed in the worth of convincing Tyrande Whisperwind and, through his deep understanding of the Night Elves, their leaders, and through his diplomatic abilities, potentially rallying the Night Elves to their cause. Logosh envisioned forming the Alliance at an earlier juncture, thereby averting the formation of the Horde entirely. His plans extended to integrating the High Elves of Quel'Thalas permanently into the Alliance, and utilizing his close ties with King Terenas Menethil to influence the young Prince Arthas Menethil, perhaps even averting the rise of the Lich King. Logosh saw a path to a brighter future, a future he was determined to weave into reality. The horizon was filled with endless potential, and it was upon him to set these grand plans in motion. What do you think Varian Wrynn, or Logosh as he would become known in this timeline, would do next? Comment below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider liking and subscribing and sharing this video with your friends or favorite streamer, so I know to make more of these what if videos. Let me know which characters and time periods you'd like to see next. Until next time, ScorpRogue out.